the silence that recognizes everything. There is a moment in human life so quiet that most people never notice it. It is not a thought, it is not a decision, it is not an emotion. It is the moment before all of that. And this is where something begins that we have gradually unfolded in our conversation, not as theory, but as living experience. It began in something completely ordinary: movement, travel, daily life, a motorcycle, wind, a city, work. And yet, within it, something subtle started to appear, a sense that there is a difference between being fully present in yourself and being slightly shifted away from it. Something very small, so small it cannot be grasped by the mind, but it can be felt. And this is important to understand from the very beginning. This entire bridge we are speaking about is not about gaining something. It is about learning to recognize what is already happening. Gradually, we touched what can be called the clean signal, a state where the inner world is quiet, where there is no resistance, where everything flows without friction. In such a state, reality feels clearer, simpler, more direct, and many people stop there. They say, "This is it." But then comes a subtle shift, because there is something even more subtle than a clean state. We called it the subtle noise. It is not chaos, it is not stress, it is not emotional disturbance, it is a micro movement inside. It is a very quiet attempt to hold something, to understand something, to capture something, to confirm something. For example, maybe it would be good, "I hope that," "I wonder if," or even more subtle, the feeling that something fits, and the mind gently holds on to it so it does not disappear. And in the body, it does not appear as tension you would immediately recognize. It is more like a slight shift, a minimal contraction, a tiny narrowing of space. And this is the moment most people never notice. But for the kind of awareness we are speaking about, this is the first key, because clarity is not about feeling nothing. Clarity is about not needing to hold anything. And then we went deeper. We discovered that there is something that looks like clarity, but is still a movement of the mind. We called it noise. This is a very subtle layer. It happens when a person experiences a beautiful state, peace, openness, connection, and the mind begins to quietly claim it, not aggressively, not consciously, more like silently. "This is it. This is right. I want to keep this. This is important." And in that moment, something changes, because now there is not only experience itself, but also someone who begins to define it. And that is a difference that cannot be understood logically, but can be felt directly in the body. In pure presence, there is no need to interpret anything. In spiritual noise, everything begins to be interpreted. And then we moved further to intuition, a word that people use often, but rarely truly distinguish from thinking. Intuition is not a sentence. It is not a story. It is not analysis. It is more like an impulse without explanation. Go this way. Stop. Do this. But without pressure, without argument, without needing confirmation. And when a person allows it, things begin to unfold naturally, without inner conflict. But even here, there is a subtle boundary, because the mind very quickly attaches meaning to intuition. And in that moment, intuition becomes projection. Mental projection is a very interesting phenomenon. It is not a lie. It is not an error. It is simply interpretation. The mind takes an impulse and adds a story to it. If something happens, meaning is immediately created. If you see something, interpretation arises. If you feel something, a reason appears. And with that comes expectation of outcome. And this is exactly where subtlety is lost, because intuition does not require outcome. Projection already contains it. And so we gradually arrived at the most subtle distinction, the moment where even intuition, in the sense of direction, dissolves. And what remains is being, pure being without direction. This is not a state that can be achieved as a goal, because every goal already contains mental movement. It is more like a moment where everything that could interpret simply withdraws, and what remains is what is, without the question of where, without the question of why, without the question of what next. Breathing happens, sound happens, movement happens, but there is no one internally directing it. And paradoxically, in this state, there is the greatest clarity, not because something is understood, but because nothing needs to be understood. And then we notice something else. Even the attempt to hold this state becomes a mental movement. Even the attempt to be pure creates subtle noise. Even the attempt to stay in silence creates tension. And this is perhaps the most delicate point of the entire bridge. Because true clarity is not something you hold, it is something you notice when nothing is being held. And in everyday life, it does not appear as something extraordinary. It appears very simply in ordinary moments. When you are moving, riding, working, seeing a bird in motion, hearing music that coincidentally meets the exact moment you are in. And in that instant, something aligns for a second, not because it has meaning, but because you are present. And here is the final understanding of this chapter. There is no difference between the spiritual and the ordinary. The difference exists only in whether there is someone interpreting it or not. And when there is no one, everything remains the same, yet completely different. Reality does not change, only separation disappears. And this is the golden bridge of consciousness, not a path upward, not an escape, not an achievement, but a gradual recognition of the subtle layers of what is happening right now. And the more subtly it is seen, the less there is a need to interfere. And the less there is interference, the more direct life becomes. And in this lies the simplicity we have unfolded here, not as a concept, but as a living perception available right now.